Down and yeah, is this okay? Good. And now Michael Courtney is presenting on Ethio-Modern Dance, Ethiopian tradition as a tool in contemporary processes. Welcome.
Hello. Just setting up my PowerPoint. Yeah. All right. I may sit, I may stand, I may sit, I may stand. I'm going to start sitting now. So, I'm Mikey, a.k.a. Michael Courtney, which is my government name. And I say this in my hypnotizing voice. I am here to plant the seed of Ethiopian culture in your hearts and minds. Yes? I am a philosophical mover, or dancer, however you choose to call me. And from a somatic perspective, life is movement, and I consider myself to be a lifist. This means that I view the world that I inhabit through a lens of aesthetic appreciation for all creation. My creative process as a lifist, or artist, is inspired and influenced by my embodied history. My parents were activists in the U.S. Civil Rights Movement. I'm raised in the hip-hop cultural movement. I'm forever immersed in the Rastafarian movement. Are you seeing the trend here? Movement, dance. I move through life with an intentional purpose, using movement or dance as a platform to bridge cultural knowledge gaps within global communities. This is why I focus my MA in ethnochoreology research as well as my current PhD in arts practice research on the development of Ethio-Modern dance. Now, what is Ethio-Modern dance? Ethio-Modern dance is my amalgamated embodiment of African culture, with a focus on Ethiopia, as it is expressed through the lens of a Western urban contemporary performing artist. It represents my multicultural environmental experiences of my habitus, which includes my experiences of growing up as part of the African diaspora, becoming a professional performing artist, and repatriating to Ethiopia in 2005. My embodied knowledge and lived experiences are conceptual tools which I employ in my artistic practice for developing Ethio-Modern dance. Ethio is my African heritage, and modern, my perception of the world that I exist in and how I'm influenced by it. So you might ask, why do I focus on Ethiopia? Well, the depth of the African culture is oftentimes forgotten by the mainstream world. In most cases, when African dance is discussed globally, there is little or no focus on Eastern African dance forms, or more specifically, Ethiopian dance forms. This may be due to the little academic research available that focuses on the dance culture from the Horn of Africa. In regards to Ethiopia, no extensive research has been done on the traditional dances since the early 1960s by Hungarian researcher György Martin, who stated, air, music, and dance, as well as singer, musician, and dancer, are interwoven in an inseparable unity. This was his response to seeing Ethiopian tradition. I hope that by illustrating and sharing my embodied cultural experience through Ethio-Modern dance, I will inspire other artists and scholars to include Ethiopia in the global concept of African dance culture. But, as of now, when most people talk about Ethiopia, it's usually associated with famine and civil war. Although this is a part of the history, it is not the Ethiopia that I have experienced. For me, Ethiopia is the heartbeat of Africa. It is the known birthplace of civilization, the source of the Blue Nile, and it's a nation of people with many of their indigenous cultural traditions still intact due to the fact that Ethiopia was never colonized by Western civilization. So, how did I end up connected to Ethiopia? It's centered around him. And by him, I mean His Imperial Majesty, him. Emperor Haile Selassie I, King of Kings and Lord of Lords of Ethiopia. I'm a Rastafarian. As Rastafarians, we adhere to the teachings of His Majesty. So when I refer to His Majesty, I'm not referring to anybody in England, I'm referring to the Ethiopian king. He is the last of the 225 kings of the kingdom of Abyssinia, that is the imperial flag of Ethiopia. He's the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, hence why the flag has the Lion of Judah in the center of it. This is the current flag of Ethiopia that represents the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. So, just to give a little bit of backstory on Ethiopia. I'm standing now because I'm not speaking from the slide. Okay, so Ethiopia has a long-standing history. They are 3rd century following of Christ. They have a Judeo-Christian background from the time of Solomon and Sheba. And this particular Ethiopian art depicts a story that is related to the story of Solomon and Sheba. The first king of the modern Ethiopian dynasty, the kingdom of Abyssinia, was established by the son of Sheba, who was the Aksumite queen at that particular time, and King Solomon of Israel. When this son was born, he went back to Israel to visit his father, and his father said, the sun will no longer shine in Israel. It will now shine in Ethiopia. And the story is that the Ark of the Covenant was taken from Israel and now resides in Aksum, which is in the northern region of Ethiopia. So, aside from Menelik I, that brings us to Menelik II, who defended the Ethiopian nationality and the Ethiopian country against the First Ethio-Italian War. And the First Ethio-Italian War took place in Adwa. It was called the Battle of Adwa. And Italy was not victorious. As I said before, Ethiopia has maintained their independence. The Second Ethio-Italian War dealt with Haile Selassie. And it was also a catalyst for the beginning of World War II. His Majesty made an address to the League of Nations because Ethiopia was the only African country that was a part of the League of Nations at that time. And his address to the League of Nations about Italy trying to invade and take over the country, essentially this was during the scramble for Africa where everybody was getting their, all the Europeans were getting their peace. He said, if you do not help us in this situation, then the same thing is going to happen to you. And ultimately, his words fell on deaf ears, but they were very prophetic, and that was the beginning of when World War II actually kicked off. When Hitler and all of those things happened with Hitler, that's when they decided England came in and decided to help push Italy out of Ethiopia, and Italy was only in Ethiopia for about 5 years, so they never conquered Ethiopia. There is a lot of Italian influence in it. Also, Ethiopia is the birthplace of coffee. It's the origin of coffee. It's found in the Kaffa region of Ethiopia, which is in the east. It also has some of the, it's almost considered to be a world phenomenon of Christian marvels in Ethiopia. They have rock-hewn churches in Lalibela that were supposedly assisted in building not only by the humans but also by the angels. Because if you look at the craftsmanship of the work and when they were built, it makes you wonder how they were built into the mountains, underground, and people say that angels helped. So, Ethiopia, although people think about famine in Ethiopia, people in Ethiopia eat. They eat a lot. And one of the staple foods is injera. Injera is a flat bread, and it's very bitter. It's fermented, it's made of a teff flour, but it's the staple food in Ethiopia. And then injera is usually piled with sauces that they call wet. And it's a very communal style of eating, and people love to eat in Ethiopia. So, that's a little backstory, or it does say backstory, I almost said black story. It does say backstory on Ethiopia. So, but since I'm here to talk about dance, let me stay on target. Now, all the things that I've mentioned have influenced my embodied understanding of Ethio-Modern dance. But there are many traditional and cultural dances that influence my work as well. Traditionally, dance is directed by rhythmic hand clapping, drums, known as a cabello, and a single-string instrument known as a masinko, and a melodic vocal element. So here are the drums, the cabello, and here's the masinko, the single-stringed violin-type instrument. And this is just a depiction of a lot of the traditional Ethiopian clothing that are generally worn when you're doing an Ethiopian performance. This is actually a cultural group called Fandika. Now, Ethiopia is broken essentially into 9 different regions, and you can see it here, but this picture only shows you images of 7 of these regions, or 7 of the cultures in the regions. Ethiopia has over 82 different nationalities. Here, you only see 7 of them. Tigray and the Amhara region, they're both known for the origin of Askusta. Askusta would be the most popular dance in Ethiopia, which is a shoulder dance. Shoulder, neck, and torso dance. The Oromo people are in the middle of the country. Their dances are a lot more rhythmic, and their costumes a little bit more elaborate. They usually wear the monkeys from a baboon's head, the scalping of a monkey on top of the head. That's what this is. And their dancing is a little bit more rhythmic, holding a stick, and usually a lot of warriors, a lot of foreign people, so they're shaking the stick and moving it all around. The eastern part of the country, you have the Somali people. Of course, there's a whole Somali region in Ethiopia because it's so close to Somalia. And a lot of their movement or dances and music is very influenced by the Arabic culture that has come through and the Muslim religion that a lot of people in that area practice. So there's a lot of movement of the neck, a lot of snapping of the wrist and shaking of the hand. Yeah? Walaita. Walaita is one of the only southern region dances and one of the only dances that actually incorporate movement of the hips. So when you look at Walaita, there's a lot more correlations to a lot of the other dances on the continent of Africa. But again, Ethiopia is a very liturgical country. So there's a lot more reservation in the northern part of Ethiopia in terms of how they represent the dancing. Gurage. The gurage is the most energetic and most physical dance known within the Ethiopian tradition. It incorporates pretty much the whole body. And it's very, very fast. It's a lot of footwork, a lot of arms, all of this type of stuff. But there's a joke in Ethiopia that say that the gurage dance so fast because they want to get back to work. And the gurage people are known for working and wanting to make money. Good entrepreneurs. So, and then the Gambela people. Gambela, in my opinion, they would be the most indigenous looking Ethiopians. The general Ethiopian look is very Afro-Semitic. So there is definitely an Eastern blend in connection to the African look. But the Gambela people are generally very, very dark-skinned, more like the Maasai of Kenya. So, this is just a few of the Ethiopian traditional dances, and I'm going to show you a clip. I will probably talk as the clip is going. So this is from the Ethiopian Millennium. You can see Askusta and some of the other cultural dances being performed. So each region has particular cultural nuances. In many cases, the musician is also a dancer, and often the best singer will also be the best dancer. So for me, in learning these traditional dances, I use the method of participant observation to embody my understanding of Ethiopian movements. In my creative choreographic process, I then dissect the characteristics of these movements and connect them with the theme of work that I am developing. I create Ethio-Modern dances for performance as well as for educational purposes. Now, although I have developed the term Ethio-Modern dance to describe this particular movement study, I am not the only person who uses Ethiopia as a tool in a contemporary context. And I'll just let this part play out. This represents pretty much all the nations of Ethiopia. And you see all the different national flags. The Ethiopian Millennium was in 2007. Ethiopia is on a Julian calendar. It's different than our Western Gregorian calendar. So they're about 7 years behind. And this represented the Ethiopian Millennium as well as the African Millennium. So there are a few others like me. Probably many, I just know of them. Destino Dance Company, based in Addis Ababa, was established by Junaid and Adisu, who are former members of Adunya Dance Company, who have also done a lot of work with their sister company, Dance United in the UK. And they're performing and creating contemporary dance, which they call Ethiopian Contemporary. But that company was established after I had already thinking about Ethio-Modern dance. Jaida Dance Troupe, based in Toronto, Canada. They call what they do Ethio-Fusion. And they incorporate some of the Ethiopian tradition as well. Beta Israel Dance Troupe, which is based in Haifa, Israel. I'm not sure if Ruth Deshelle is still the director, but she was the founder of the company. and they are influenced by the Ethiopian Jewry. So there's a whole Ethiopian Jew community that migrated to Israel in the 80s. So a lot of the performers in this company are influenced by that heritage. And then also groups like Hahu, Ethio-Sinia, and many more that you can see in this particular workshop that I did in Ethiopia. A lot of these artists are influenced by their cultural tradition, but also influenced by the more modern dances that are out there in the world. So there's a lot of things that are developing in Ethiopia in terms of modern dance. So, before I conclude my presentation, I find it important to mention that Ethiopia's traditions have also infiltrated popular culture. For example, if any of you know the Harlem Shake, you know that was a little craze that had the Harlem Shake as well as the Bankhead Bounce, which is related to Atlanta, Georgia, are both said to have its origins in Eskusta. Yeah, and then also, Eskusta has also inspired, and I'll play the clip, Beyonce. In the Run the World video. And she was actually in Ethiopia for the millennium. So she's been exposed to the Ethiopian tradition. And I know the choreographer, we went to school together, so I know he's very much influenced by African tradition. So it was a very strategic move to incorporate a lot of the African tradition into that video. As well as through popular music. This particular song by the father of Ethio jazz, Mulatu Astatke, and a lot of other music by him and the Ethiopics have been sampled in popular culture. This is Ethio Sweet. This is the original version of the song by Mulatu Astatke. But it was also sampled by Damian Marley and Nas for the recent Distant Relatives album that came out a couple of years ago. And here is the hip-hop version. So, just to show, this is an example of how Ethiopia has influenced other aspects of culture. So, as I conclude, I will play a video. I will conclude by saying that Ethio-Modern Dance is something that is very personal to me. But it is my contribution to the universe. I am committed to the pursuit of Ethiopia's inclusion as a part of African dance perspective. I also envisage a brighter and more informed future for dance artists of Ethiopian community. And it is my hope that once I have completed my doctoral studies, that I will assist in the design and implementation of a third-level education dance curriculum in Ethiopia. In this curriculum, university students study not only Ethiopian traditional dances, but also modern and classical dances from around the globe. With Ethio-Modern Dance, I am not only planting the seed of Ethiopian culture in the minds of Western audiences, I also feel as though I am highlighting the added value of codifying and sustaining Ethiopian traditional dances so that they may be studied by students around the globe. And I will leave you with a quote from His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie. We know that man's physical needs and his intellectual and spiritual strivings can only be satisfied through the medium of education. And this particular piece that you're watching here is of my master's thesis performance. So, if there are any questions, burning questions, desires that you want to get out, I guess I can answer one or two, but if not, save it to the end. No?
We'll ask questions at the end. Yeah, there's time for, we agreed that if there's a burning question after each one,